The hum of excitement filled the grand ballroom of the Obsidian Rose, a symphony of hushed conversations, clinking champagne flutes, and the soft strains of a jazz quartet. 70 years. 70 years of life, love, loss, and now, what I believed would be a joyous culmination. My granddaughter, Serafina, the apple of my eye, was turning the big 7-0, and I, Elara Dubois, had orchestrated every single detail of this opulent affair. Every shimmering sequin on the table linens, every delicate orchid in the towering centerpieces, every note of the custom-composed jazz piece dedicated to her, whispered of my love and my unwavering commitment to my family. I had poured not just my considerable savings, but my very soul into this evening. Years of careful planning, clandestine calls with event planners, countless tastings of gourmet delights, all culminating in this magnificent spectacle. It was to be a testament to my enduring love, a grand gesture that would finally, irrevocably, bind us all together in an unbreakable embrace. Or so I had foolishly hoped. I stood near the entrance, a silent, almost invisible, figure amidst the swirling kaleidoscope of designer gowns and tailored suits. My own dress, a simple, elegant navy blue, felt suddenly insignificant, a stark contrast to the flamboyant attire that seemed to scream for attention. I watched as Serafina, resplendent in a shimmering gold gown that caught every glint of the chandeliers, laughed a bright, bell-like laugh, her arm looped through that of her husband, David. They were a vision of youthful success, the very picture of what I had always strived for my family to be: prosperous, respected, and above all, happy. My chest swelled with a familiar, aching pride, a feeling that had sustained me through countless trials and tribulations. I had always put them first, always. Their happiness had been my guiding star, the compass that directed every major decision in my life. And tonight, I thought, as the last of the invited guests flowed past me, offering polite, fleeting smiles that did not quite reach their eyes, tonight would be the night they truly saw it. They would see the depth of my devotion, the extent of my sacrifice. They would finally understand. But understanding, it seemed, was a luxury I could not afford. The first prick of unease, a cold, insidious tendril, began to coil in my stomach when a young woman, one of the event staff, politely but firmly ushered me away from the main entrance. "Ma'am," she said, her voice devoid of inflection, "the receiving line is over. Please find your seat inside." My heart, which moments before had sung with anticipation, faltered. The receiving line? But I had been in the receiving line. Or rather, I had stood at the periphery, waiting for my moment to embrace my granddaughter, to see the joy in her eyes when she realized the full extent of the evening's grandeur, all paid for by her grandmother. But that moment never came. Serafina had been too busy, too engrossed in the endless stream of well-wishers, too occupied with her dazzling smile and perfectly coiffed hair to even glance in my direction. My son, Marcus, and his wife, Denise, Serafina's parents, had been right there, beside her, beaming, accepting compliments as if they were the architects of this magnificent event. Not once did they acknowledge my presence, not even a fleeting nod. It was as if I were a ghost, an ethereal specter haunting the very celebration I had brought to life. I walked deeper into the ballroom, feeling a chilling sense of displacement. Every table, it seemed, was filled. Laughter and chatter echoed around me, creating a wall of sound that amplified my isolation. My eyes scanned desperately for a familiar face, a vacant chair, any sign that I belonged. There were none. The seating chart, meticulously planned by Denise, who had, of course, overridden all my suggestions, had no place for me. I saw distant relatives, acquaintances, even business partners of Marcus and Serafina, all comfortably seated, enjoying the fruits of my labor. A wave of nausea washed over me, a bitter taste rising in my throat. I had spent countless hours coordinating with the caterers, ensuring every dietary restriction was met, every wine paired perfectly with the exquisite courses. I had selected the floral arrangements, personally overseen the lighting, and even commissioned the string quartet. And yet, here I was, an uninvited guest at my own party. I spotted Marcus and Denise at the head table, their faces flushed with what I now recognized as not pride, but self-satisfaction. They raised their glasses, toasting Serafina, their voices ringing with false effusiveness. They did not even glance my way. It was a calculated act, I realized with a sudden, devastating clarity. Not an oversight. A deliberate omission. The air in the ballroom, once so vibrant, now felt heavy, suffocating. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with a sudden, searing rage. How dare they? How dare they parade my generosity as their own, while treating me as if I were less than nothing? My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, each beat a painful reminder of their cruelty. I felt a profound, almost primal sense of betrayal, a wound that went deeper than any physical pain. This was not just about a party, it was about years of unspoken grievances, years of being overlooked, undervalued, and dismissed. I stumbled towards a quiet corner, near a potted palm, seeking refuge from the joyous noise that now felt like a mocking symphony. My legs felt weak, as if the ground itself was shifting beneath my feet. I leaned against the cool wall, trying to steady my breathing, to quell the rising tide of humiliation. I heard Serafina's voice, amplified by the microphone, thanking her dear parents for the most incredible, unforgettable evening. Her words, meant to be sweet, were like daggers, each one twisting deeper into my already wounded heart. Not a single mention of me. Not a single word of gratitude for the months of planning, for the financial strain I had willingly embraced to make her dreams a reality. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist, erased from the narrative of their triumph. The casual disregard, the utter lack of recognition, was a far more potent weapon than any shout or insult. It was dehumanizing. It stripped me bare of my dignity, leaving me exposed and vulnerable in the very place I had sought to create joy. A sudden flash of memory cut through the haze of my pain. Serafina, a tiny girl with bright, curious eyes, sitting on my lap as I read her bedtime stories. Her small hand in mine as we walked through the park collecting autumn leaves. Her joyful squeal as I bought her first bicycle. I had always been there for her, a constant, unwavering presence. I had nurtured her, protected her, celebrated her every small victory. And now she could not even acknowledge my existence. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. I, who had once been the very bedrock of their lives, was now less than an afterthought, an inconvenient shadow cast aside in the glare of their fabricated glory. The more I dwelled on it, the more the cold realization solidified. This was not an isolated incident. This was a pattern, a systemic dismissal that had been building for years, perhaps decades. My children, my grandchildren, had slowly, subtly, been chipping away at my worth, reducing me to a forgotten relic, a mere financial resource to be exploited and then discarded. My gaze fell upon a tray of miniature pastries, perfect little jewels of confection, each one personally approved by me after multiple rounds of testing. They sat untouched, overlooked, much like I was. The injustice of it all swelled within me, a suffocating, burning sensation. I had envisioned this night differently. I had imagined warm embraces, heartfelt thanks, a moment of shared joy that would illuminate the remaining years of my life. Instead, I was met with cold shoulders, empty glances, and a profound sense of erasure. My chest tightened, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a familiar weakness creeping in, the old familiar urge to simply disappear, to let the world consume me. But then, something shifted within me. A spark, barely perceptible at first, flickered into existence. It was not anger, not yet. It was a quiet, resolute defiance. A realization that I had given everything and received nothing but scorn in return. And that, I decided, was a debt that would not go unpaid. The warmth of the ballroom suddenly felt like a chill, the laughter like a dirge. I had paid for the celebration, but they had kicked me out. And now I knew things would never be the same. The real gift, it seemed, was yet to be given. The night air outside the Obsidian Rose was a sharp, biting contrast to the stifling warmth of the ballroom. I stood on the paved driveway, the distant sound of jazz music a cruel, mocking echo against the silence of my own shattered expectations. My car, a sensible, well-maintained sedan, was parked far down the lot, a testament to the fact that no valet had bothered to acknowledge my arrival, or, more accurately, my existence. Each step I took toward it felt like a weighted journey, a descent into a deeper chasm of despair. The grand facade of the hotel, glittering under the night sky, seemed to sneer at me, a monument to the betrayal I had just endured. As I fumbled with my car keys, my hands trembling uncontrollably, a sudden gust of wind whipped around me, chilling me to the bone. It felt symbolic, a physical manifestation of the cold indifference that had permeated the evening. I slid into the driver's seat, the familiar scent of worn leather doing little to comfort me. Instead of immediately starting the engine, I sat there, hunched over the steering wheel, the silence inside the car a deafening roar compared to the hollow cacophony of the party. It was in that moment, in the oppressive stillness, that the full weight of the evening's indignity truly crashed over me. It was not just the oversight, the lack of a seat, or even the unacknowledged financial contribution. It was the deliberate, almost surgical precision with which my presence had been erased. I had seen Denise, my daughter-in-law, whisper something to a staff member earlier in the evening, her eyes briefly flicking in my direction before she turned away with a dismissive shrug. At the time, I had dismissed it as a minor detail, perhaps a last-minute change to the floral arrangements. Now, the memory hung heavy in the air, tinged with a sinister implication. Had that been the moment my name was struck from the list, my very right to be there nullified by a casual wave of her perfectly manicured hand? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me, hot and bitter. My mind replayed scenes from the past few months, moments I had previously dismissed as harmless quirks or generational misunderstandings. Now, they took on a new, horrifying clarity, each one a brushstroke in a portrait of systematic dehumanization. There was the incident with the family photos. I had offered to organize and digitize decades of family photographs, a task I knew would bring me closer to them, a way to share our collective history. Marcus had readily agreed, but then Denise had intervened. "Oh, Mother Elara," she had purred, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "that is so thoughtful of you. But, we are really trying to streamline things. We have a professional service for that. It is all about efficiency, dear." Her words, ostensibly polite, had been a sharp rebuke, a subtle undermining of my ability to contribute, to be useful. My offer, born of love and a desire to connect, was dismissed as antiquated, inefficient. It was not just about the photos, it was about my relevance, my place in their modern, efficient world. Then there was the holiday dinner a few months prior. I had spent days preparing my famous sweet potato pie, a recipe passed down through generations of my family, a dish that held the very essence of our heritage. It was always a staple, a beloved tradition. I had arrived, pie in hand, only to find Denise had prepared a store-bought, gluten-free, vegan version of a sweet potato tart. She had then made a pointed comment, loud enough for everyone to hear, about keeping up with modern dietary needs. My pie, lovingly made, sat untouched in the corner, a silent testament to my obsolescence. My heart had ached then, but I had swallowed the hurt, telling myself it was a generational difference, not a personal slight. Now, I saw it for what it truly was, a deliberate attempt to eradicate my traditions, my contributions, and, ultimately, my identity from our shared family life. These weren't isolated incidents. They were threads in a meticulously woven tapestry of dismissal. The subtle eye rolls when I offered a piece of advice. The casual interruptions when I tried to share a story from my youth. The way they would speak over me, or as if I were not even present, discussing plans for family vacations they knew I could not afford, or expensive renovations to their homes, knowing full well I lived on a modest pension. My opinions, my experiences, my very existence, were slowly but surely being rendered invisible. They were not just ignoring me, they were actively diminishing me, stripping away my voice, my wisdom, and my inherent worth. The most painful part was the growing realization that Marcus, my son, had become an accomplice in this quiet campaign of erasure. My Marcus, whom I had carried, nurtured, and loved fiercely. The boy who had once run to me with scraped knees and tear-filled eyes, seeking comfort and solace. He, too, had adopted Denise's cold detachment, her subtle sneers. When I had attempted to discuss my concerns with him, to voice my feelings of being sidelined, he would always deflect. "Oh, mother," he would say, his voice laced with an exasperated weariness, "you are just being sensitive. Denise means well. She is just trying to make things easier." Easier for whom, Marcus? Easier for them, to forget my presence, to disregard my feelings, to slowly chip away at my very being. His unwillingness to stand up for me, his passive acceptance of Denise's machinations, wounded me more deeply than any direct insult. It was a profound betrayal, a quiet abandonment by the one person I had always believed would be my unwavering champion. I remembered the recent incident with my will. I had expressed my desire to update it, to ensure my small but significant assets were distributed fairly. I had mentioned a particular piece of land, a small plot inherited from my own grandmother, which I intended for my other granddaughter, Chloe, Seraphina's younger sister, who had always shown me genuine affection and respect. When I casually brought this up to Marcus, he had quickly arranged a meeting with his lawyer. During the meeting, which Denise insisted on attending, the lawyer, a sharp, cold woman, had subtly steered the conversation away from my specific wishes. She had spoken in legalese, confusing me with jargon and subtly implying that my choices were impractical or financially unsound. Denise, meanwhile, had nodded sagely, interjecting with comments like, "Mother Elara always worries so much about the little things. Marcus and I just want to ensure her comfort and security in her later years." It was a thinly veiled attempt to gain control, to manipulate my wishes, all under the guise of care. I had felt a chill then, a creeping dread that something far more sinister was at play than mere forgetfulness or generational difference. The birthday celebration tonight was the culmination of it all. It was the final, brutal blow in their slow, insidious campaign to make me disappear. They had not just kicked me out of the party, they had kicked me out of their lives, out of their narrative, out of their very consideration. The pain in my chest was no longer a dull ache, it was a searing fire, fueled by humiliation and a profound sense of injustice. My eyes, which had remained dry through the immediate shock, now burned with unshed tears. But they were not tears of sorrow or self-pity. They were tears of a different kind, hot, cleansing tears of righteous indignation. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, the rough fabric of my sleeve a stark reminder of the cold reality. The initial shock was giving way to something harder, something steelier. This was not merely about being hurt. This was about being violated, disrespected, and cast aside by those who owed me love and gratitude. The passive, accepting Elara, the one who always made excuses for their behavior, was slowly, painfully, dying in that car. In her place, a new resolve began to harden, a quiet strength I had not felt in years. I had dedicated my life to them, sacrificed my own comfort for their well-being, poured my heart and soul, and every penny I had, into their happiness. And this was my reward. This was the gift they had given me in return. A single, stark thought crystallized in my mind, cold and clear as a winter night. Asterisk, they will regret this. Asterisk, the injustice was too monumental, the slight too profound, to be simply absorbed and forgotten. My silence had long been interpreted as weakness, my patience as boundless. They believed they had effectively rendered me powerless, an old woman easily manipulated and dismissed. But they were gravely mistaken. They had seen only the dutiful mother, the doting grandmother, the one who always gave without asking for anything in return. They had never seen the fire that still smoldered beneath the ashes of my seemingly docile exterior. And tonight, ignited by their contempt, that fire had found its fuel. The engine roared to life, a sudden, jarring sound in the quiet night. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, a silent vow forming in the depths of my being. I would not allow this to define me. I would not allow them to dictate my worth. The pain was still raw, the humiliation fresh, but a seed had been planted, a seed of an idea so bold, so audacious, that it made my breath catch in my throat. I did not know yet what form this real gift would take, what my next move would be. But I knew, with an absolute certainty that resonated deep within my bones, that it would be a gift they would never forget. And it would be one that they would certainly not appreciate. The road ahead was dark, but for the first time in a very long time, I felt a strange, chilling clarity. My journey of quiet endurance was over. The time for silent suffering had passed. The days that followed Serafina's birthday party were a blur of simmering resentment and quiet, determined planning. I did not immediately launch into a grand scheme, for true revenge, I knew, was a dish best served meticulously prepared. My immediate priority was to create a space for myself, a sanctuary away from their suffocating disdain. My small, cozy home, once a haven, now felt tainted by the memory of their neglect. I needed air, space, and time to think. I started small, with acts of quiet rebellion. The first thing I did was cancel the weekly family dinners I had hosted for years. These gatherings, once a source of immense joy for me, had slowly morphed into perfunctory obligations for them, opportunities for Denise to subtly belittle my cooking and for Marcus to check his phone under the table. When Marcus called, feigning concern, I simply stated, "I am feeling a little under the weather, dear. Perhaps next week." Next week turned into the week after, and then the month after. Their initial feigned worry quickly dissolved into relief, a clear indication of how burdensome these gatherings truly were for them. This small act of withdrawal was exhilarating. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a tiny victory in a war I was just beginning to wage. My next step was to sever the financial ties that, I realized, had become a leash around my neck. For years, I had quietly supplemented their lives. Serafina's private school tuition, Marcus's temporary business setbacks, Denise's endless parade of designer handbags, my pension, my carefully managed savings, even some of the proceeds from a small inheritance I had received from a distant aunt, had all been funneled into their aspirations. They saw me not as a loving matriarch, but as an endless wellspring of funds. It was time to cap that well. The first call was to my bank. I instructed them to immediately cease all recurring transfers to Marcus and Serafina's accounts. The manager, a kind young woman named Aisha who had handled my accounts for years, seemed surprised but did not question my decision. "Are you quite sure, Ms. Dubois?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Perfectly sure, Aisha. It is time for a change." Hearing the click of the phone as she confirmed the cessation of payments felt like severing invisible chains. A profound sense of liberation washed over me, a feeling I had not experienced in decades. Within days, the calls began. First, Serafina. Her voice, usually sweet and light, was now tinged with an unfamiliar edge. "Grandma, my tuition payment is due next week. Is there a delay with the usual transfer?" I feigned ignorance. "Oh, dear. Is it? I am afraid I have been so preoccupied with things. I will have to look into it." Her thinly veiled annoyance was palpable. "But Grandma, you always take care of it. It is just a simple transfer." I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "My dear, I am an old woman. My memory is not what it once was. Perhaps you should speak to your parents about these matters now." The line went silent, and then she hung up without another word. The satisfaction of that small exchange was immense, a silent acknowledgement of the power dynamic shifting. Then came Marcus, his voice a mixture of confusion and thinly veiled accusation. "Mother, what is going on with Serafina's tuition? And the funds for the house repairs? Denise is quite upset." His tone was accusatory, as if I had committed a grave error, rather than simply stopping my unsolicited financial support. "Marcus," I said, my voice steady, "I have been supporting you and your family for many years. It is time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. My resources are not infinite, and frankly, I have other plans for them." The indignation in his voice was instant. "Other plans? Mother, we are your family. Your only family. What could possibly be more important than us?" His words, steeped in a self-serving sense of entitlement, solidified my resolve. They truly believed they had an inherent right to my money, that my sole purpose was to fund their lavish lifestyles. The audacity of it was staggering. The conversation with Denise was, predictably, the most venomous. She did not mince words. "Elara, what exactly do you think you are doing? Do you have any idea the position you are putting us in? Serafina's tuition is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the renovations on the house cannot just stop. Are you trying to ruin us? Her voice rose with each sentence, bordering on a hysterical shriek. Denise, I replied, my voice calm and unwavering, a stark contrast to her escalating fury. I have been footing the bill for your chosen lifestyle for long enough. My resources are my own, and I am no longer obligated to fund your extravagances. Perhaps it is time you and Marcus considered living within your means. The silence on her end was chilling, a prelude, I knew, to something far worse. She slammed the phone down, the sound echoing in my ear. Their outrage, however, was not just about the money. It was about control. For years, they had seen me as a malleable figure, easily swayed by their pleas and manipulations. They had dictated my involvement in their lives, granting me fleeting access when it suited their narrative, and then dismissing me when I was no longer convenient. My sudden financial independence was not just a loss of funds for them, it was a profound shift in power, a defiance of the carefully constructed hierarchy they had imposed. They expected me to be grateful for the crumbs of attention they threw my way, even as I provided the entire loaf. This reversal, this newfound autonomy, was simply intolerable to them. As the days turned into weeks, their calls grew less frequent, their tones more desperate. They tried to appeal to my motherly instincts, to my duty as a grandmother. They spoke of the hard times they were facing, the unexpected expenses. But their words rang hollow, devoid of any genuine affection or concern for me. It was all about what I could provide, not about who I was. My heart, once so susceptible to their pleas, remained unmoved. The pain of the birthday party, the public humiliation, had cauterized those old wounds, leaving behind a hard, unyielding scar. During this period of detachment, I started to rediscover myself. I resumed my passion for painting, a hobby I had neglected for years under the weight of family obligations. I enrolled in a local art class, something I had always wanted to do but never found the time or the permission for. The vibrant colors on the canvas were a stark contrast to the muted tones of my recent life. I spent hours in my garden, tending to my roses, finding solace in the quiet rhythm of nature. I reconnected with old friends, women whose laughter and genuine camaraderie had been sorely missed. We met for tea, shared stories, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly seen, truly valued. These women, unlike my family, did not view my age as a weakness or a limitation. They saw it as a testament to resilience, a badge of wisdom. One afternoon, during a phone call with my dear friend Beatrice, I found myself confiding in her about the birthday party, something I had previously kept hidden, too ashamed to reveal the depth of my family's cruelty. Beatrice listened patiently, her quiet hum of understanding a balm to my raw nerves. When I finished, a long silence stretched between us. Then she said, her voice firm and clear, "Elara, you are a queen. You have given them everything, and they have treated you like a pauper. It is time for them to learn that a queen can abdicate her throne, and the kingdom will crumble without her." Her words resonated deeply within me. A queen. Yes, I was a queen, and I would no longer allow myself to be treated as anything less. This growing confidence, this quiet strength, began to manifest in subtle ways. I started dressing more boldly, choosing brighter colors, embracing accessories I had long deemed too flashy. I carried myself with a new posture, shoulders back, head held high. The reflection in the mirror no longer showed a weary old woman, but a woman reawakening, her eyes alight with a newfound purpose. The transformation was internal, but it radiated outwards, a silent declaration of independence. I knew, however, that the cessation of funds was merely the first volley. The real gift was still to come, something that would truly make them understand the consequences of their actions, something that would hit them where it truly hurt, their carefully constructed image of respectability and their ingrained sense of entitlement. The ideas began to form, swirling in my mind like a carefully choreographed dance. I envisioned a scenario where their hubris would be exposed, their carefully maintained facades shattered, and their inherent greed brought into the harsh light of day. But the details were still hazy, forming slowly, like a photograph developing in the darkroom of my mind. The pain of the birthday party was the catalyst, but the motivation was now something far grander than mere revenge. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming my dignity. And it was about teaching them a lesson that no amount of money could buy. They had kicked me out of their celebration, oblivious to the fact that I held the keys to a far grander, more significant event. And soon, very soon, I would unlock the doors to that event, inviting them to witness a spectacle they would never forget. The morning of what would become a pivotal day dawned crisp and clear. The air hummed with a subtle energy, a premonition of the seismic shift about to occur. For weeks, I had been meticulously setting the stage, weaving a web of carefully calculated actions, each thread designed to lead to this precise moment. My family, steeped in their self-importance, remained blissfully unaware, lost in the illusion of their unchallenged dominance. They had mistaken my quiet withdrawal for defeat, my silence for submission. They would soon discover just how profoundly they had misjudged me. I had arranged for a family gathering, sending out elegantly printed invitations that specified a formal brunch at a high-end, exclusive venue, not the Obsidian Rose, but an equally prestigious establishment known for its discretion and impeccable service. The invitations, sent not just to Marcus, Denise, and Serafina, but to my few remaining loyal relatives and a select group of close family friends, stated simply, a family announcement. The vague nature of the invitation, I knew, would pique their curiosity, especially given my recent, dramatic withdrawal from their lives. They would come, if only to sate their nosiness, perhaps even hoping for a final, desperate plea for reconciliation or, more likely, a concession on my part. As the first guests began to arrive, I stood by the entrance of the private dining room, a serene smile on my face, my new confidence radiating outwards like a gentle warmth. My dress, a striking emerald green, flowed elegantly around me, and the pearls I wore, a gift from my late husband, gleamed softly at my throat. I looked every bit the gracious matriarch they had always pretended I was. Marcus and Denise arrived first, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and forced politeness. Serafina trailed behind them, her usual effervescence muted by what I surmised was the lingering sting of her tuition woes. They approached me with tentative smiles. "Mother," Marcus began, his voice surprisingly subdued, "it's good to see you out and about." Denise offered a brittle smile. "We were so curious about this announcement, Elara. Is everything all right?" Their feigned concern was almost comical. "Everything," I replied, my voice calm and steady, "is about to become perfectly clear." Once everyone had settled, and the last of the mimosas had been poured, I stood at the head of the table. A hush fell over the room, an expectant silence. Marcus and Denise exchanged nervous glances, their smiles finally faltering. Serafina fiddled with her napkin. My few truly supportive relatives, like my niece, Clara, and my grandnephew, Michael, watched me with genuine affection and curiosity, their loyalty a stark contrast to the greed emanating from the others. "Dear family and friends," I began, my voice clear and resonating through the room, "I have called you here today for a very important announcement. As many of you know, I recently celebrated my 70th birthday." I paused, allowing the unspoken irony to hang in the air. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. It was a reflective time for me. It made me think deeply about family, about legacy, and about what truly matters. My eyes swept across their faces, lingering for a moment on Marcus, Denise, and Serafina. Their carefully constructed masks of composure were beginning to crack. "For many years," I continued, "I have dedicated my life and my resources to supporting my family. I have poured my savings, my time, and my love into ensuring what I believed would be your happiness and success." I saw Denise's jaw clench, her eyes narrowing. However, during this period of reflection, I came to a profound realization. True support is not simply about financial provision. It is about respect. It is about gratitude. It is about valuing one another, not just for what we can provide, but for who we are. I picked up a document from the table, a thick, official-looking envelope, and held it up for all to see. As some of you may recall, I recently decided to update my will. This decision was not made lightly. It was made after careful consideration of where my true loyalties lie and where my legacy truly belongs. Marcus's face went pale. Denise gasped, a small, choked sound. Serafina's eyes darted from me to her parents, a dawning horror spreading across her features. The air in the room thickened with tension, a tangible shift in atmosphere. For years, I stated, my voice gaining strength, my generous contributions to Marcus and Denise's household, and to Serafina's education and lifestyle, were assumed. They were expected. Not once was genuine gratitude expressed. Instead, my efforts were met with dismissal, with condescension, and ultimately, with public humiliation at an event I paid for with my own hard-earned money. My gaze locked with Serafina's, who recoiled slightly. The 70th birthday celebration, designed as a gesture of profound love, became instead a painful testament to a profound lack of respect. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Denise's ragged breathing. Several of the family friends looked from my calm, resolute face to the stricken, furious visages of Marcus, Denise, and Serafina. Disbelief warred with dawning understanding on their faces. Therefore, I declared, my voice ringing with a newfound authority, after much deliberation, I have decided to make a significant change to my will. The bulk of my estate, including my primary residence, my investments, and a substantial portion of my liquid assets, will not be distributed as previously anticipated. Marcus, unable to contain himself, finally erupted. Mother, what are you saying? You can't be serious. We are your children. Indeed, Marcus, I countered, my voice sharp and unwavering, you are my children. And I have provided for you tirelessly. But the legacy I wish to leave is not one of inherited wealth without earned respect. It is a legacy of true value, of dignity, and of recognizing those who genuinely care. I turned to face Clara and Michael, my expression softening. To my dear niece, Clara, who has always shown me unwavering kindness, support, and genuine affection, I am bequeathing my beloved home. It is a place of warmth, a place of peace, and it deserves to be cherished by someone who understands its true value. Clara gasped, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at me with profound gratitude. Michael, too, looked utterly stunned, but there was a genuine smile on his face. Then I turned back to the rest of the room. And as for the remaining substantial assets, I continued, my voice unwavering, they will be divided into 2 portions. A significant endowment will be made to the Elderly Care and Dignity Foundation, a wonderful organization dedicated to ensuring that senior citizens are treated with the respect and care they deserve, and are never left feeling alone or undervalued. Whispers broke out among the guests, some nodding in approval, others openly staring at the now furious trio of Marcus, Denise, and Serafina. And the remaining portion, I announced, a subtle smile playing on my lips, will be used to purchase a beautiful, spacious villa on the coast of Tuscany. A place where I intend to spend my remaining years, surrounded by beauty, peace, and the company of true friends. The reaction was instantaneous. Denise let out a choked cry, her face contorted in a mask of rage and disbelief. Tuscany. You're going to Tuscany. What about us? What about Serafina's tuition? You can't do this, she shrieked, rising from her seat. Marcus, pale and trembling, stood beside her. Mother, this is outrageous. You are disinheriting your own blood. This is insane. Serafina, tears streaming down her face, looked at me with an expression of utter devastation, as if her entire future had just crumbled before her eyes. On the contrary, I stated, my voice calm, infused with the quiet satisfaction of a queen delivering a just decree, this is not insane. This is justice. You made your choices. You chose to kick me out of my own celebration, to treat me as if I were invisible, to exploit my generosity while offering only contempt in return. This, I said, gesturing around the elegant room, is the real gift. The gift of consequences. The gift of witnessing the true nature of your actions. I looked directly at Marcus, his face now a roadmap of shock and fury. You believed I was a bottomless well, Marcus, there for your convenience and funding. You were wrong. You believed my silence meant I was weak. You were even more wrong. My gaze then shifted to Denise, her eyes blazing with impotent rage. You thought you could manipulate me, control me, and erase me from the narrative of this family. You have learned otherwise, have you not? And finally, to Serafina, whose tears seemed more like self-pity than genuine remorse. You received the most extravagant birthday celebration imaginable, paid for by the grandmother you could not even acknowledge. May that memory serve as a lesson in gratitude, or rather, the lack thereof. With that, I picked up my clutch, nodded serenely at the stunned assembly, and walked out of the dining room, leaving behind a wake of shattered expectations, simmering resentment, and a profound, unforgettable silence. The heavy mahogany doors swung shut behind me, sealing their fate and opening a glorious, independent new chapter for myself. The air outside felt crisp, clean, and filled with the promise of a future I would finally, truly, live for myself. The real gift was not just a consequence for them, it was the liberating realization of my own unbreakable spirit.